Okay, good morning everyone.
Morning.
Morning.
First of all, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Almer. You can call me, of course, Almer. Now, we are going to talk about, of course, conversational implicature. Now, when my father told me to read this material the other night, I was so confused because I've never heard this word before, implicature. What is this? It feels like an alien word for me. And then I kind of realized it starts with the word imply, and it sounds very familiar. And then I realized because it stems from the word implicit, the opposite of explicit. And so implicit for me is something that is familiar, and it means something that is hidden, right? Hidden meaning between what we actually say. So a meaning behind what we say. So the meaning is not the same by the words that we are saying. So to understand exactly what goes on when we process meaning, we need to understand the difference, of course, between what we said and what is actually implied in our sentence. So what is said is basically the actual linguistic content, the words that comes out of the words of the speaker's mouth. So if I say there's a dog, and that means there's a dog. That is what is said. But what is implied is different. What is implied combines the actual words that we utter with the context in which we say them. So I might say, oh, there's the door. But if I say it in an argument, for example, I'm fighting with my sister, right, which happens a lot, and then I'm tired of arguing with her, I might say, there's the door. Well, I'm not just randomly saying household items. I'm basically saying, I'm tired of arguing, you can get out through that door. So that is what is implied, and what is implied, it is what we say, what we call implicature. In this case, conversational implicature. Now, the reason we can understand things, although it means different than what we are actually saying, is because there's something called the Cooperative Principle. Now, what it is basically whenever there's ambiguity in what a speaker is saying, the audience should look for the most likely intended meaning of what's being said, given the context. So, for example, another case, if there's a painting and then I ask someone else, do you like the painting? And then the person answers, well, I like the frame, that means he doesn't like the painting, but he likes the frame. Although it doesn't make sense, it seems that his answer says, I like the frame. I'm asking you, do you like the painting? But he answers, I like the frame. So we need to find out the most likely intended meaning, and that is what we mean by the cooperative principle. And therefore, the cooperative principle is ruled by the Generalized maxim. This is the name of the guy that made the rules. And there are 4 rules here: quantity, quality, relation, and manner. This is why we can understand sentences that people are saying. First of all, there's quantity. When you talk with someone, you need to be adequately informative. So if you're, for example, usually my father or my mother asks me, how was school today? And then I simply answer, fine. Well, of course it answers the question, but it's not adequately informative. What my mother or father wants to actually know is, did you pass math? Have you eaten? And all those stuff. So I need to be more informative. Second of all, we shouldn't be more informative than is required. So for example, if I got late to school, and then my teacher asked me, why are you late? I can simply say, I was sick, or maybe I had a diarrhea. I don't need to explain how it was and what it feels like. It's just too much information. So just enough information is good enough. And then the second rule is quality. When we talk with someone else, we shouldn't say things that we think are false. So gossip, we shouldn't gossip, and then we shouldn't tell lies, for example. And then second of all, we should refrain from making claims for which we have insufficient evidence. So if we don't know for a fact if something is true, we better don't say it. This is the second rule in making people understand what we are saying. The third one is relation. Say relevant things. So if people are asking you, do you like the painting? You can simply say, yes, I like the painting, or no, I don't like it. It's better because people will understand it better as well. And then the fourth one is, of course, the manner. You should avoid obscure turns of phrase, so just use easy words. The second one is ambiguity should be avoided, so just be clear. Do not say sentences that can mean 2 different things. And then third, be brief. So if you can say something in 1 minute, don't say it in 10 minutes. And then the fourth one, be orderly. Especially if you want to give like how to cook, something like that, you need to give it in an orderly manner. So because there are these rules, we can break them. So if we say things that are out of context, people can try to understand because, well, we are trying to be cooperative with that person. So if we are not being cooperative, then that it means there's a hidden meaning behind what I say, and therefore people can understand sarcasm, people can understand metaphors because of these rules. And because we follow these rules all the time, when we break them, people will try to find the most likely correct meaning of what we are actually trying to say. And so there goes, we can go to implicature now. So implicature can be divided into two parts. There's conversational, and then there is the conventional implicatures. The conversational is again divided into two parts. There's the particular, of course, the opposite of particular, the general one. And then the general is again divided into two parts. There's indefinite and there's scalar. Now, although it might seem complicated, it's actually quite easy to understand because believe it or not, you actually use this all the time. I use this all the time, but I didn't realize that it was called an implicature until, well, of course, I read it and my father told me to read it last night. So, the first one is particularized conversational implicature. Particularized, as the word says itself, means implicatures that are in certain contexts. So it can only be true if the context is given. So for example, here there is a sentence, Leila said, "Wow, has your boss gone crazy?" And then Mary says, "Let's go get some coffee." You know, it doesn't answer the question, is he going crazy or not, right? But there's a hidden meaning why she said it and why she answered that way. Maybe her boss is at the end of the room and then she doesn't want to say that her boss is crazy. She doesn't want to get fired, right? So she says it, "Let's go get some coffee." It means, yes, he's going crazy, giving me all this works, you know, all this paperworks. But I don't want to say it, I just want to say it implicitly. And that is what particularized implicature means, because the context is special for that moment only. If I say, "Let's go get some coffee" in another context, it would mean another thing. If I'm bored, for example, I said, "I'm really bored," and then my sister replied, "Let's go get some coffee." That means she is literally asking me to go get some coffee, because the context is different. So that is what it means by particularized, because the context and the background is different and is particular. It is different from the generalized implicature. Generalized, as the word says, is general. So whenever you say it, wherever you say it, it will always mean the same thing. So here, for example, A asked, "Did you buy bread and cheese?" And then I said, "I brought bread." Well, that means I didn't buy cheese, I only bought bread. It's general because we don't need context. Wherever you say it, however you say it, it will mean that, and it will never mean another thing anytime, anywhere. And so that is what we call generalized. But then generalized is split into another two parts. The first one is the indefinite one, right? And there's indefinite and scalar. The indefinite is simple. It's just a or an. We use this all the time. So, for example, if I say, "I was sitting in a garden and a child looked over the fence," if I use "a" in this sentence, that means the child and the fence was not mine. It was someone else's fence, and it was someone else's garden, and it was someone else's child. Because if it was my child, I would have said, "I was sitting in my garden and my child looked over the fence," because I want to be, as the Grace's maxim said, adequately informative. So by saying a garden and a child, that means the garden and the child is not mine. The second example is there's a car in front of the house. So that means in front of the house there's a car and it's not mine. So I don't know whose car is that, because if it was mine, I would say there's my car in front of the house. So that's what the indefinite implicature means. And then the second one is the scalar. Scalar is also quite simple. All we need to know is this for sentences here: all, most, some, few, and then there's always, often, sometimes. This is from the biggest to the smallest, right? Because, well, all is all of them, and then most, well, for most of them, and so on and so forth. So if I say, "Some of the boys went to the party," it means that I am implying only some of the boys are going to the party. Some of them are at home or somewhere else. They're not at the party. So the implicature inside it is that some means not all. So yeah, that's basically it about scalar implicature. And then there's another example. The courses are sometimes interesting. So some other times the courses are not that interesting. In other words, it's boring, for example. And then I could say, it's possible that they were delayed. So possible would actually mean that it is not certain or it is probable that they are delayed and therefore they are late to come somewhere where they are actually talking about it. So the implicature is basically the underlying meaning and the second meaning behind the sentence that are actually said. So if I say sometimes, of course, it means not always, and then if I say some, it means not all, and the other examples given. For example, here there's the sentence, I can't lend you $10. That means I cannot lend you even more than that. So you don't need, if you ask a person, can I borrow $10? And then that person says no, you don't need to ask them for like $20 because if they're not giving you $10, of course they're not giving you $20. So that's that the meaning behind it is, of course, I don't have $10 and I don't have more than $10. So no, I'm not giving you money at all. So that's just one other example of scalar implicature. Now, of course, the last one is the conventional implicature. This is quite different from the conversational implicature because the meaning doesn't change from the sentence that are being said. It merely just add up to it. So if I say, she put on her clothes and left the house, it will still mean that she put on her clothes and she left the house. But the end here gives an extra meaning. That means she left the house after she put on her clothes. Because if I said it the other way around, it would mean different things. She would left her house before she put on the clothes. So the underlying meaning here is the presupposition as what the first presentation was given. So Q after P. But in the second example, N will mean another thing. Here she was happy and ready to work. This is P plus Q because if you change the order, it doesn't change the meaning. So she's ready to work and happy. It still means the same thing and it's still correct. So conventional implicatures is basically implicature, but it doesn't change the meaning. That's the only difference between conversational and implicature. Conversational changes the meaning of the sentence, or there's an underlying meaning behind it, but conventional doesn't. It only adds up to the sentence. Here is one other example. John is poor, but happy. So but here is giving you a contrast for the sentence. So John is poor, he should be sad, for example, because he's poor, but no, he's actually happy. So the implicature here is contrast. That's what conventional implicatures again mean. It doesn't change the sentence and the meaning behind it, it simply adds up to the sentence itself. Or here is another example. Dennis isn't here yet. The yet here implies that he will be here, he's just not here yet right now, but he will be here, it's just late, for example. So the implication or the implicature is that he is not here yet, but he will be here later in time. And here is the last example. Even Mary came to the party. Even here implies that I was surprised. I was surprised that Mary came here because I thought she wouldn't come. But hey, even Mary is here, why is John not here, for example? So even implies that I was surprised and it was not expected. And yeah, that's all about implicatures and the cooperation and the cooperative principle. Thank you. Yeah.
Very good presentation, I think, but so far we can't get the point. Yeah, so
is it clear enough?
yeah, I think enough clear.
So
Just
is it clear enough?
very
There's no
clear.
conclusions.
Yeah,
That's the problem.
because a lot of the example also, but I still confused about the conclusion about this material. How we can use this material, and then when we use this.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, we use this actually in our lives a lot of times. For example, to make conversations not boring.
Yeah.
So, for example, in Indonesian, we usually have sarcasm, right? So, like, when someone asks something obvious to us, for example, like, oh, I can't make that of an example, but you guys know sarcasm, right? Well, what I've just said is basically sarcasm itself. So, basically, implicatures, we can say something with a hidden meaning behind it because we don't want to say it directly. So, for example, if I have a kid and then they would go crazy if I say ice cream, and then someone else said, do you want to get some food? And then I said, we can go get some ICECREAM, you know, spell it out so that the kids don't hear us. Now, it's not important, but it implies that I don't want the kids to hear it. So anytime you say something that means different or have hidden meanings behind it, you have basically practiced conversational implicature. Or when you use most, all, often, sometimes, those are also implicatures. When you use the definitive a or an, there is also implicature. And then, like, for example, metaphors, those are also implicatures. So yeah, you use it all the time. So you just don't realize it sometimes. Yeah.
It means we use it means the implicature is how to make a briefly sentence like that.
Well, it doesn't necessarily make it brief. Sometimes it makes it longer, in fact. Like the example that I gave you when you spell out the word so that someone else doesn't hear it, or sometimes it makes the answer doesn't make sense. Like when the person says, is your boss going crazy? And then he said, let's go get some coffee. Like, it doesn't make sense. I'm asking you about your boss, but yeah, but there's a hidden meaning behind it. I don't want my boss hear what I say, so I don't answer your question. So that is what the implicatures can be used for.
So thank you.
Thank you.